Welcome, sports fans, boys and girls of all ages, to the pilot episode number 1 of Garbage Time Takes. My name is Derek. Along with me are my co-hosts Bobby, and Dennis. So just to give you some background on our motivations for starting this podcast, we all love sports. We're just a group of college guys, just kicking it, talking about sports. We just enjoy our favorite teams, mine being the Lions of Detroit football Lions, and the Michigan Wolverines. Those are two teams I really follow the closest. Bobby, would you like to take over and give some background about yourself?
Yeah, so hello everybody, my name's Bobby. I guess as far as motivation for starting the podcast goes, we're all roommates here at Central Michigan University, and as Derek said, a bunch of just college guys that enjoy watching a lot of sports, and we kind of felt that, originally our motivation started with, I believe, the fact that we felt that Midwest teams were really underrepresented in the, in the media. Whether that's rightfully so or not is a whole other story, because we're not really winners, but we thought it would be good to start something that, is kind of grassroots. And for that reason, then Garbage Time Takes, we bought a mic and here we are. So as far as my favorite teams go, for NBA, I really appreciate the Detroit Pistons. Just like Derek said, I'm a big Detroit football Lions fan.
That's right.
And then for college, unfortunately, that's where I part ways with Derek. I'm a Michigan State Spartans fan. But of course, CMU Chippewas always have to be represented in this podcast, so no slander.
That's right. And Dennis, how about you, our friend from Ohio?
That's right, Derek. I would like to open up by saying fire up chips.
Absolutely.
That's how we got to start out with the fire up chips. I'm now a Central Michigan Chippewa, but originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and as such, my allegiance is to none other than the Cincinnati Bengals, the 0-8 currently Cincinnati Bengals. Baseball is always the Reds, and then as far as college sports go, I'm all in on the Bearcats. So a full Cincinnati fan, I would say I'm more of the outlier in this group, but have loved getting to know Derek and Bobby over the years and was fully on board with this idea of starting Garbage Time Takes, and we just have so many good sports conversations, we figured we might as well learn how to share them. So
that's right. And I guess just to, piggyback off our favorite sports teams, I also enjoy Detroit Red Wings hockey as well as the Chicago Cubs. And in keeping with our theme of baseball, we're just going to jump right in to our first topic. The Washington Nationals. Have won the World Series for the first time in how many years? Some want to get that.
I'm going to add that up right now.
Yeah,
pull that up, Bobby.
Appreciate it. While you're doing that, it was really amazing. Just the series as a whole. The road team winning every single game.
Incredible.
I believe for the first time in MLB history,
That's
and
correct.
any sports history, that the road team won a 7-game series 4-3, with every road team winning every single game. That's just unbelievable. You'd think home field advantage would have some role to play in this series. It just didn't. Dennis, what are your thoughts on the Nationals winning the World Series?
Well, Derek, I mimic that. It's just incredible. Never before seen in the sports world, really, that a 7-game series was won entirely on the road. And for this team, this Washington Nationals team, to be able to do it, coming in as one of those wild card spots, just fighting their way literally through every single series, the St. Louis Cardinals and the Los Angeles Dodgers falling before the inevitable Houston Astros were defeated in Houston in Game 7 just a couple of nights ago. So it's just absolutely incredible when you really think about the road that they took to get here. And my hat's off to them. I congratulate every single one of them. Part of that is the Reds fan in me that can't stand the St. Louis Cardinals, but all in all considered, really well done by the Nationals. Very impressed.
I agree.
And I can't believe we didn't know this. From what I'm finding here, it's looked like the Nationals have never before won a World Series.
I believe that is true as well.
That's correct.
So really hats off to them. As somebody that I always preface my comments on baseball with saying I'm not grown up an avid baseball fan. I've kind of just learned from it as I've watched over the years. I think a good place to start the conversation. I know it's something Derek is passionate about. Is that Game 6 controversial
Yes.
call with Trey Turner running on the first base line, and I know Game 6 luckily was won by the Nationals, but there was much uproar in the MLB world just on the interpretation of that ruling, and
Well, can you imagine what the uproar would have been if they would have lost that baseball game? That's the question.
I was going to say the same thing. Imagine if Houston wins that game. Instead of praising this, what would have been a 6-game series for what it was, which was an incredibly exciting and eventful World Series. It would have been overshadowed by this lingering, controversial, some say questionable, some say correct call. And, I think that really would have been a shame for, just the world of baseball as a whole. There aren't, baseball's got its, its diehard fans, but in terms of being, for the general population, most of them don't tune into baseball until the World Series. And to have had, if that were to have happened, the Astros win that game, you kind of wonder how, baseball is viewed in the eyes of the general population.
I just think it's worth noting here that that big hit from Anthony Rendon really, as you said, bailed them out in the sense that the MLB didn't get as much bad press the day after. Fans are ended up roaring, I'm sure we'll talk about this throughout the course of this podcast, but especially as we see with the Detroit Lions constantly getting ran amok by the
That's right.
by the referees. It's in the NFL having to deal with many controversies that they've had on their hands recently. It was really not a good look for the MLB to all of a sudden have
on the national stage.
On the national stage, World Series biggest stage in sports, some would argue, to essentially just almost blow it.
Right.
That's just going to leave sour grapes in the minds of fans.
Of course.
Correct, and that just actually brought to mind the question. I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I wonder if you think about that game and hypothetically consider a situation in which the Nationals actually ended up losing that game. Do you say that type of call is on a magnitude similar to the pass interference we saw against the New Orleans Saints? The call that was so controversial just months ago. Is that even comparable? Is that a comparison that you can make? Well, I'm curious.
I think you can say it's comparable. Both of these happened on a national stage.
Exactly my thought.
And if, Washington loses that game, you have two huge calls that some say right, some say wrong, depending on whose team you're rooting for, of course. That really just, as I was saying earlier, just overshadows a greatly played and contested ballgame. Just going back to that Saints-Rams game,
Game that came down to the wire.
Yeah, it did. If the Saints get that call, do you think that, at that point, you think that the Saints are going to run down the clock and we see a whole different Super Bowl.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Drew Brees versus Tom Brady.
Exactly. For the Nationals to have, their chance at winning the World Series, taken, quote unquote, taken away from them by what is, a questionable call, undoubtedly. I could definitely see how that compares, but I think you'd have to put the Nationals call ahead of the Saints one, just because it would have, in theory, cost them the World Series if that's how most of the people viewed it.
Yeah. My thoughts on that are, I understand that was what would that have been, the NFC Championship game that the Saints and the Rams were in at the point when that call was made. The only difference that I think between the calls is that with a pass interference call like that, it was just such a blatant call, blatant miss of a call.
Yep.
That anybody that didn't know didn't know football could have said, man, that just does not look right. And everybody, of course, that knew football was like, well, what the heck? And the NFL comes out afterward admitting that the call was blown.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, here we are, 2019 football season, 2019-2020 football season, and the rules have been completely changed just almost as a result of that call.
Right.
Costing so much. And you look at the the call that was made against the Nationals. Even the announcers, as we were talking about when it happened, the announcers barely even understood what the rule was, or were misinterpreting the explanation of it. Unless you had, Derek's Chicago Cubs had a similar situation happen.
Yes, we did against the same Washington Nationals.
That kind of familiarized him with the rule, but even avid baseball fans, not all of them, were immediately caught on to what was actually going on, and I think that with that lack of understanding also plays a role into the frustration that the fans were feeling, because it's like, well, the pass interference call, the guy was blatantly, dragged down, but like for many just watching in the split second of the game, it was like, well, the man just ran down the first base line and maybe the throw was a little bit off, and all of a sudden second and third base, and now there's one out with a runner on first, and you're looking at a completely different ball game.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I mean, I think the big difference between those two calls, if you're going to make a comparison, is the fact that the pass interference call was a blatant incorrect call of a rule. The officials missed the call based on the rule. The problem in the World Series game was the rule itself, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the call of the rule, the implementation by the umpires of the rule, but it is a systematic rule within baseball that needs to be changed. And I think that's the big difference. Unreviewable at that as well.
Yeah, I guess, as Bobby alluded to, I was indeed on the side that the correct call was made. When it happened to the Cubs earlier in the year, it was even more, egregious than that. Mm-hmm. In terms of both the base running and the throw. Wilson Contreras was the one running to first base in that game. I want to say it was in May. He wasn't even close to running down the line, but the throw was
errant.
Yeah, it was completely errant.
off.
There was zero chance, whether Wilson Contreras was running in the correct baseline or not, that the first baseman was even going to be able to make a play on that ball. And I think that's when I watched the Nationals game, saw that call being made. I was understanding of the rule. In terms of, if Trey Turner runs in the baseline all the way down until those last couple feet, steps in the baseline and gets pegged, he gets protection from being called out for interference at that point. I thought the correct call was made, and as Dennis said, my issue is more with the rule, mm-hmm. and it was also, with Joe Torre's explanation a little bit, saying it wasn't really about running down the baseline. It was
in fact, it was running
right. But it was more about him with Trey Turner making contact with the Astros first baseman glove and knocking it off. And I think
Gurriel, I believe at first.
And I think you can make a case that the runners don't advance to second and third if Gurriel is able to have a clean opportunity at catching the ball. Because I do think he had a chance. You can throw whatever percentages out there that you want to. But I think he had a chance to make a play on the ball if Trey Turner doesn't hit him and his glove comes off. I really do. And I think, there's a lot of gray area there. And I think that benefited the MLB to a point where it wasn't blatantly obvious.
Yeah. Because there was a judgment.
Right, and it's a judgment call. And I think, at the end of the day, all's well that ends well. The Nationals come back from 19 and 31 earlier in the season to come back and take the World Series. Anthony Rendon with a
huge
ball don't lie type of home run in the eyes of many of the baseball fans who are watching. But just hats off to the Washington Nationals. What an amazing season they had. And credit to the Astros too. Played a heck of a series, and the Nationals were just better, in the postseason as a whole for the year of 2019.
As we move on to that Game 7, where it was the closeout game for the Nationals, a lot of controversy also around the managing decisions of who they were throwing in relief.
Right, for the Astros.
And do we have any thoughts on pulling the starter there and then not going to Garrett Cole even on relatively short rest? I know that's what many fans, when we did see him warming up in the pen.
Mm-hmm. We did. We had seen him warming up in the inning prior, I believe. I thought it was interesting. Will Harris was A.J. Hinch's best reliever through the postseason. In the minds of, including myself, many fans, I in my head, I'm seeing Will Harris serve up a pitch right down the English Channel to Rendon that he takes yard and completely flips that game on its head.
It wasn't even until late in the game that they really got into it for the Nationals.
That's right, and that's actually how it happened for both games. I think Greinke was absolutely dominating, and you can argue that, the pitch he walked Juan Soto on was strike 2, and, I really didn't see Greinke as having control issues or a pitch count issue at that point.
In Game 7 of the World Series.
Exactly, the magnitude of that.
I felt like Greinke was, he had a couple rough calls go against him in that at bat. And I was surprised to see A.J. Hinch go to the pen. I wasn't necessarily surprised to see Will Harris come out, because that's Hinch's number one guy here. But at the same time, Garrett Cole was warming up the inning prior. You can take into account that Garrett Cole's only relief appearance was in college. He only has one relief appearance.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't know
a singular one.
And he's so dominant, that he doesn't even hardly ever pitch out of the stretch anyway. And to put him in a situation where he's pitching out of the stretch with a man on, you don't know how that's going to go. But at the same time, I do think personally that A.J. Hinch should have given Greinke at least another batter, because up to that point, he gives up the home run on a mistake pitch.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the stats here. 6 and 1/3 innings with 2 hits and 2 earned. But in the Game 7 of the World Series, not an egregious performance by any stretch.
Exactly, and I think when it comes down to it, Greinke was dominating, served up a bad pitch, walked Juan Soto. I still felt like though he was in command of his pitches at that point, and that I would have left him in. And then again, I'm not the one paid to make those decisions. So.
And then immediately following Will Harris giving up a run, returning to Roberto Osuna following that,
yes.
Who comes in and absolutely deals up a horrendous performance through 1 1/3.
Yeah. A guy who was already in the middle of some controversy himself.
Exactly.
But that's a little bit of a different topic than we're dealing with right now. I know, Dennis, you had some thoughts on A.J. Hinch's bullpen management or mismanagement, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I would reflect what you guys say. I just think in terms of kind of the unravelment, if you will, in the last couple of innings after Greinke's exit, I've always stood by the policy. There's no way to practice a 3-foot putt to win the Masters, and there's no way to practice a 30-yard field goal to win the Super Bowl, and so there's just statistics hold up over the course of a season. But when you get to that point in that situation, it's just one guy against another guy. And you could criticize Hinch, you could not criticize Hinch, but at the end of the day, he's just got to throw who he thinks is best. And so I don't fault him for the decision he made, but obviously in this case, it did not turn out for him.
Then I'm looking down the line here from Osuna. We go to Joe Smith comes into relief, and he has 2 hits and 2 earned in 1/3 inning pitched.
Yeah.
That's not going to get the job done in a closing effort.
Yeah, it really was just a complete meltdown.
It was.
From the Astros bullpen. And, unfortunately for them, that wasn't the only night it happened to him.
Indeed.
It happened to him the night before. So, we can argue this way and that way, but at the end of the day, the Nationals are indeed World Series champions.
Well deserved.
Well deserved.
So much grit. I'm so impressed by the grit of the Washington Nationals. They were down. I believe they were down in every single elimination game. Is that correct?
That is. I believe that's true. Yeah.
And they won all of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
And they had been trailing at some point in each single elimination game that they played in this postseason.
It's almost
just
like,
incredible.
Almost like they waited. They waited.
It's like
down to
by
fire
design.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So hats off to the Washington Nationals. Now, within the last 20 minutes here, I had some breaking news. Stephen Curry is going to be out for 3 months as a result of breaking his left hand a couple nights ago.
Against the Phoenix Suns.
I think at this point, the Warriors have to take into account, should they tank and then retool for next year? They're most likely they're not going to have Klay Thompson anyway.
Yeah, projected not to be here all season.
Exactly. You can make the argument that the Warriors should try to tank, maybe sneak into the lottery somewhere in the top 5-6, get a, rookie in that can boost their depth. And then, for the
For
rest...
cheap.
For cheap,
depth.
exactly. And
Cheap
then
depth.
for the rest of the season, see how your depth works just in terms of your roster as a whole. As a Michigan fan, really interested to see how Jordan Poole, how his
Getting plenty of shots.
how his production is going to end up being over the course of the season. I don't really, pay attention to the Warriors too much. But, I think there's an argument to be made that, they can tank and that they can, just kind of explore, all the options on their roster. Because really from here on out for the next 3 months, it's going to be the D'Angelo Russell Draymond Green show, barring any other unfortunate injuries to the Warriors players. Dennis, you got any thoughts, or Bobby, anyone want to take control here?
I think what would potentially be, I think tanking is definitely not out of the question. However, I think that the Warriors still have too much talent. But potentially playing the Western Conference schedule with a very deep Western Conference this year.
Yeah.
I think that does set themselves up in that position if that is something that they wanted to do. I do think it will be big with Willie Cauley-Stein returning here in the next couple of days. Will provide them a big presence at center.
Okay.
And we've seen some big, over the last couple of seasons with him at Sacramento, we've seen some big performances out of him as well. And I expect him to get plenty of minutes following him recovering from the injury. And, I think he's somebody that can make a difference. D'Angelo Russell's used to running a show, basically, in Brooklyn. Did make an All-Star team last year. Albeit at the end of the list, but he did make it. But I think the problem will not be, But I'm looking down the list here. After some of those players that we just mentioned, and it's looking pretty rough as far as that. Nobody that's really proven. Where you got the Sean Livingstons, the
Andre
Iguodala's, the Boogie Cousins even coming in off the
to provide some veteran experience.
Veteran experience and proven, people that have proven that they have done this before. And I think we're going to see really what I'm interested to see what Steve Kerr's made of here, because a lot of people praise him in the league as a great coach, and I'm a little bit skeptical in the sense that the man's had nothing but all-stars and winning players, and then it's easy to coach when you're playing with house money.
Yeah.
And you bring in Kevin Durant, it's like, well, which player? Man, how many minutes am I going to play Kevin Durant tonight? It's like that's really not
what a difficult question to answer.
It's not necessarily the hardest job to do, but he is multiple-time NBA final champion, and I'll give respect there. But I'm interested to see how he's going to put together, especially with the pride that the Warriors organization has had, the past few years. Like, are we going to live or are we going to die here? And I'm interested to see what Steve Kerr does to, try to bring the boys back into it, especially following a loss of what was going to be almost their James Harden figurehead this season, which, even though I know Steve Kerr said that was not going to be a possibility, he was going to be pulling up from all places and very often this season without the presence of Klay Thompson. And with him not looking to come back, I'll be very surprised at this point if the Warriors do make the playoffs, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. These guys covered it pretty well. I think Bobby's point about Steve Kerr is particularly interesting. Just see how he responds to the situation. He's always had such reliable players, and yes, he does have his victories, his final victories, but it'll be very, very interesting to see how he responds to this setback, I would say.
I'm just looking at their next 5 games or so here, and I'm seeing their tonight against the Spurs. That's very questionable. Team. That's probably a playoff team, bottom of the Western Conference playoff team. It'll be a great test. You've got the Hornets tomorrow, which that should be a win even within their depleted state. But we'll see how that Hornets team looks. Trailblazers, that's probably not looking too good. Another playoff team. Rockets, definitely a playoff team. So these are all games that are, I hate to dare say outside of the Hornets, that these are games that they're probably going to lose. And playing even the Timberwolves after that in the Eastern Conference, no slouch over there with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, playing hard there, and Robert Covington and what they're trying to put together in Minnesota. But I think it's just, especially playing that Western Conference, like I said, a lot of teams are going to have their sights set on the Warriors as well for what they've done to the league the past few years, and I think teams will get up to play for the Warriors in an 82-game season just because they want to.
Any chance to shut that dynasty down while they're, kick them while they're down kind of attitude.
Exactly.
I do believe the Timberwolves are in the Western Conference.
Oh, they are. That's right. That's my fault.
But
that's my fault.
That's just, nothing too major there.
It's my
so
fault.
if you were the Warriors management and you were Steve Kerr, Bobby, do you think you would want to tank?
I guess this just goes to my whole philosophy about tanking, but I think that the Warriors franchise and the fan base can do with a tank this season after the given success that they've had. They're by no means going to be out of it in the following season. It's barely 5 games into this season, and
that's very true.
Looking forward to next season. You never know if you have somebody that comes off your bench and one of these newer guys that show something, and all of a sudden you're...
Come on, Jordan Poole, come on.
All of a sudden Jordan Poole comes off the bench, and all of a sudden you're in the running. And you've got somebody on your hands. But I think this is a good opportunity for the Warriors to find out what they've got as far as new depth.
Yeah.
Get that depth, a lot of experience, and I think that could be valuable, a year down the line when Klay Thompson's back, Steph Curry's back. And Steph Curry will be back this season.
Yes, he will.
It's only projected 3 months, I believe, that he was going to be out. So maybe they make a playoff push following his return. However, 3 months is a lot of games that you're missing, and in the Western Conference, I'm not sure that that's ground that's easily going to be made up.
I agree.
So right now, if Warriors management thinks that they're not going to make it, I see no reason to fight for a
Better
higher
draft pick.
fight for
maybe hit a little bit of a
draft.
soft reset.
Exactly. And as you said, if you can bring in another fresh, cheap college player that's looking to be something, you've got to also prepare yourself. I believe it's Bob Myers is the GM.
Yeah. You
got to prepare yourself for life after Steph Curry, after Draymond Green, life after
Klay
Thompson. And I know these guys are relatively in their prime still, but especially, D'Angelo Russell, I don't know if that's a piece that they want to rebuild around long term.
Right.
I think that almost was looking at it from
part of their plan, whether, sort of feeling out process, is D'Angelo Russell going to work out with this long term? And now, of course, he has an excellent opportunity
to show himself in the Western Conference, and we'll see what he's made of a little bit, as well as now basically the primary offensive option on their team.
Definitely.
And I really just think that the Warriors could benefit from getting that experience a little bit more evened out.
Yep.
And having, when they're in the finals or, trying to make a playoff push next year in the season after this one, as we've seen many times, especially when Andre Iguodala comes in and wins a finals MVP, having depth, having experience well-rounded on your roster besides what you consider your superstar is going to be obviously a very, very useful thing. And as I said, I'm interested to see what Steve Kerr does with the whole thing.
As am I. Dennis, I know that basketball isn't really your domain. Would you tank? Do you think you would, or do you think your pride with the organization would get in the way?
See, I think that's going to be the difficulty is swallowing the pride out there in Golden State. That's a very difficult thing to do. However, the allure of such a high value draft pick,
yes,
especially in the NBA,
trade,
exactly, especially when the value of a draft pick in the NBA is so high.
Mm-hmm.
2 rounds.
Especially when you bring in the fact that you're going to eventually have to replace some of these guys that have made these runs and put you in the place that you are today. I don't know if that'll be high enough of an allure to dismiss their pride. I think if it were me, I would play to win at all cost, but that's kind of just my philosophy on tanking in general.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily fault the management for
falling
to that the allure of that high round draft pick, especially in a sport where it's so crucial.
Yes.
Especially in rebuilding a team. So I completely understand that perspective, but if it were me, I would not be tanking.
And just looking at this here, looking at the payroll, we've got Steph Curry on the books for $40 million this year. We've got Klay Thompson on the books for $32. D'Angelo Russell
these guys
on $27.
Yeah.
And then Draymond Green with an $18 million hit this season, going up to $22 next season.
You're right.
So, this is And even Kayvon Looney's making $5 million on the books. I mean, I don't know who the heck signed that contract. With Willie Cauley-Stein only making $2 million, but
Yeah.
I mean, really, this is not going to be. They need these players to. I mean, their windows here within the next basically 2 seasons following this one, barring that the injuries keep them out of contention this year. Following that 2022 season or 21-22 season, I mean, they're going to have to re-sign Steph Curry, and at that point, he's going to be 33, almost 34 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are we really signing 34-year-old Steph Curry to another 5-year max deal?
Right.
Or
Right.
D'Angelo Russell will not going to be in his prime, but once again, Klay Thompson, he's 31, 32 years old. You got to sign him for another 5 years. I mean, there's a lot up in the air, and especially with Draymond Green, but they've got him locked down for about 5 more seasons, including this one. So I mean, that's not really an issue, but it's going to be tough to bring in. It would be super valuable if this season they wind up getting a high draft pick, bring somebody in that's only costing them about $2 to $3 million. I mean, Jordan Poole's a first round pick, and he's on the books for $2 million on the cap this year. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
If he can bring them production, if they can bring in somebody with high impact, even higher impact, because Jordan Poole's a late first rounder.
Yep.
That's tanking's looking really appealing at that point,
does.
especially because they have other teams that are looking to maybe ship somebody, a mid-level player that's going to provide you some value, maybe for a relatively solid contract for team-friendly wise. And you can change that. You don't even have to draft somebody. You can change that draft pick right into another player or some depth.
Yep.
And trade out some of these guys that are looking kind of iffy on the roster. So
For sure.
Well, I definitely know somebody in this room that would love to see the production out of Jordan Poole.
That's right. That's me. That is me. I would
my man
love to
Derek.
see Jordan Poole, really take a big step, in his growth this season, and he's definitely got an opportunity now with both Steph Curry and Klay Thompson out for a significant period of time. D'Angelo Russell, he'll be most likely taking over, primary point guard duties. Jordan Poole, I love the guy. I think he's got a bright future in the NBA. He's a little bit raw, but, I definitely think he can provide some scoring off the bench, and, maybe he develops along the way into something special. That's my hope for him anyway. Moving on.
Let's do it.
We have a big game this week in the NFL. We have the undefeated New England Patriots taking on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens.
Big
Huge game. Sunday night.
It's gonna be great. The Baltimore Ravens lead a pretty dynamic offense with Lamar Jackson spearheading, that roster right there. The Patriots with far and away the number one defense up to this point. Naysayers may call into question their relatively cake schedule, and rightfully so. They haven't really faced some top-end talent through, 8 games this season.
But indeed, you play who you play.
But you do play who you play, and they're not in control of the schedule per se. It's not their fault that AFC East is got a
Horrendous.
and
Absolutely
dreadful.
horrendous.
You got a team in the New York Jets with 1 win. The Miami Dolphins got no wins, and I'm personally not convinced that the Buffalo Bills are even that much of a playoff team, because they've had a relatively easy schedule considering, looking back, and now they've lost 2 straight, and
On the skids a bit. What are they going to do?
Yeah, I'm definitely not sold on the Buffalo Bills by any means. It's going to be a really interesting, really fun football game, I think, to watch. I'll be interested, to see how Tom Brady does, how the Patriots defense does.
A whole lot of naysayers in both of those camps.
Oh yes, for sure. And Lamar Jackson going up against what will be the best defense he faces all year.
One of my favorite young players.
The Patriots, they year in, year out, it's amazing what they're able to do in terms of establishing a consistency of excellence. And I'm a huge Tom Brady fan since he comes from my Michigan Wolverines. And, Bill Belichick is an absolute wizard of a head coach. Just looking at the adjustments he makes in-game, just getting the best out of his players week in, week out. It's truly amazing what they've been doing as a dynasty for the past however many years now. And I'm really excited to see, what this Patriots team is about, what this Ravens team is about.
Yeah, Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
you're good.
I was
You're
done
good.
anyway. You're all good.
I just think it's incredibly interesting as someone who's invested a lot of time and energy into watching AFC North football in particular.
I was just about to bring that up.
For
Big,
so
big
many,
divisional game for the Bengals.
for so many years, it was, at least in my memory, that kind of cross-divisional rivalry within the AFC was New England and Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And that was such a big game. It almost seemed like every year that was the AFC Championship game, or at least a big divisional round game.
Yep.
Every year when they played each other, like this year they played Week 1, and it was an absolute disaster. It was a train wreck for Pittsburgh, which I love to see personally.
Back when you thought there was no chance that the Bengals would lose to the 49ers.
No chance that we would lose to Jimmy G. None. Zero.
Gucci Garop.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I think this marks an interesting transition between significant games in the AFC cross-divisionally, with New England still being in that position as they always have been, perhaps towards the end of their dynasty, some may say. But ushered in by that new era in Lamar Jackson. And I just think that's a really interesting transition between
Is it the passing
Pittsburgh.
of the torch?
And I kind of feel like it is, Bobby. It kind of seems like it is from, Big Ben. He comes out this year, gets hurt, it's not going to come back. And so Pittsburgh down at the bottom of the division with my Bengals, sadly, and just the whole flip in the AFC North. But now you're seeing that primetime game, this big game between Baltimore, of all people, versus the New England Patriots. Kind of the new guys versus the established guys, and it's just really interesting.
Now, don't forget, too long ago, 2013, the Ravens were Super Bowl champions.
They were Super Bowl champions.
In the highly anticipated Harbaugh Bowl.
Yes, they were.
The Ravens, they fell off a little bit, definitely.
They're no slouch.
Yep, Joe Flacco.
Super Bowl winning quarterback Joe Flacco.
Is he elite? Is he not elite? I like to say he's not elite.
That's another podcast episode.
The eliteness of quarterbacks, yeah. But I felt like that year Joe Flacco really got to ride the backs of a really great Baltimore Ravens defense.
Indeed.
Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs.
Hall of Famers galore.
Defense wins championships.
That team was insane defensively, and I think Flacco definitely was able to, as long as he didn't perform poorly, he was gonna be able to help win them a Super Bowl. But is he elite? I don't think so. Just gonna throw that in there, but.
I would concur. Strongly concur.
The Ravens, coming off a big win against Seattle last week.
Very true.
That was 2 weeks ago, I should say. That was a very highly anticipated game. Russell Wilson definitely in the MVP conversation. Lamar Jackson inserting himself in the MVP conversation as well. The Ravens took down a very good Seattle team. Bobby, what are you thinking about this matchup upcoming?
I'm thinking that. Looking at the stats here, I'm very, very concerned if the Patriots defense can stifle the Baltimore Ravens. We've kind of heard this story all year that the Ravens are built for a play from ahead offense. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid that if the Ravens start off poorly, their defense does a shake-up, or because they're currently first in the league in actually average drive time right now.
Okay.
And so, first in plays, first in yards, and it's if that can get nipped in the bud, and they're only
by an early turnover,
and we're forcing Lamar Jackson as a much improved passer, but we're still forcing him to go out there and having to deliver throws down the field with Hollywood Brown limited, big time receiver for Lamar. I'm thinking that Tom Brady always seems to he's a 6-time Super Bowl champion or something like that, 6-time I believe.
Completed the Infinity Gauntlet of Super Bowl champions.
Exactly, and he always seems to show up in big moments, and the man can put a couple tubs on the board early. I'm afraid the Ravens may just fall apart at the seams. So I think it's very important for the Baltimore defense to set in early, and for the Ravens to not try to do too much early in the game to keep it close going into the second half. Because if we're looking at a 17-3, 14-0 ball game, New England at half, because I do anticipate this being a low scoring affair. The Baltimore Ravens could be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. As you stated, Lamar Jackson's definitely an improved passer, but he's definitely not an established one. He does open up a lot of things with his legs in terms
Amazing.
of, and it really is remarkable what he's doing. I like him and Russell Wilson.
Indeed, yeah.
They're both, those type of guys that really give you a lot of options offensively. But yeah, for me personally, really excited to see, what the Patriots are made out of. We have an idea, possibly what the Ravens are made out of going into Seattle, a couple weeks ago, beating Seattle at home. And, the Ravens get the Patriots in their place.
Yeah.
So, home field advantage, Baltimore is going to be giving the Ravens all the support they can. And, what could be a playoff game down the road later this year.
That's what I was just about to say.
Whether it's in the AFC Championship
Foxborough.
game, especially, yes, in terms of home field advantage you have to take into consideration. But yeah, I'm definitely intrigued as to, who are the New England Patriots. Defensively, they haven't really faced a great offense yet. The Buffalo Bills defense is good. I don't have all that much faith in their offense, but, the Bills
Josh Allen.
The Bills defense did a really good job of, containing New England's offense in that game.
It can be done.
And yes, it can be done. The Patriots are mortal, not at this point yet, but the Ravens could expose maybe some cracks they've seen throughout their film sessions.
Mohamed Sanu, though, arriving. We'll get to see him.
And yes, we will get to see the
That would be a lot of
anticipated arrival of Mohamed Sanu in a New England Patriots uniform. That just adds another dynamic weapon for Tom Brady, as if he needs another one. When he gets new toys to work with, you saw what he did with Antonio Brown for the 1 week he had him. It looked like Antonio Brown didn't even miss a beat. So,
albeit against the Miami Dolphins.
Albeit against the Miami Dolphins, yes, but
it was a good performance.
It was, and I think Tom is the GOAT for me. I love him. He's an amazing quarterback, and I'll be really interested to see how he plays this week against the Ravens. For me personally, my projection, I'm seeing a 24-17 victory for New England. Maybe even 27-17, but I do think at the end of the game, most likely it'll be a one-possession ball game. I don't foresee either team, really pulling away from the other.
Yeah, this definitely, for me at least, spells playoff prequel.
Oh, yeah.
I think it has it written all over it. I mean, you think about these two teams that
AFC North winner by far.
Yeah,
right?
halfway through this season, and both teams pretty comfortably ahead of their divisions. Baltimore ahead of Pittsburgh by 2 games at the moment, and New England up 2.5 on, as we said, the potentially struggling Buffalo Bills. Maybe not quite enough faith there to sense them knocking off the Patriots in any fashion. So
Right.
It definitely spells playoff prequel, at least for me. Definitely it'll be interesting to see how Baltimore fares at home, and consider that when the playoff schedule actually shakes out. And if it is indeed in Foxborough, how that would completely change things. But I do also anticipate a New England Patriots victory. Part of that's probably the Bengals fan in me, but I just believe in. I just am of the mindset that you can't really bet against the Patriots until they prove that you can't. You know, I mean, they just continue to win and they continue to win, and I'm not going to bet against them until they lose.
Dennis, what do you got for a score on that?
What do I got for a score on that? I agree it's going to be a fairly low scoring affair. I'm going to go with 2017 New England. I think it'll be within a field goal.
Okay.
Even it's going to be a very exciting game. I can't wait to watch it actually.
Yeah, final point for passing along to our next segment. Ravens number 1 in rushing attempts this season, and number 26 in passing attempts. I think that just really outlines. And also number 2 in yards per attempt with 5.5 per attempt. And I mean, you can see why they're sticking with it, and it's working, draining down that clock. And as we've all said, it's going to be a low-scoring ball game in my opinion too. I'm looking at a 21-17 New England finish.
21-17.
Okay.
All right, within a point of Bobby.
Yeah, definitely bringing up a good point there. Baltimore, they use their running game to set up their passing game for sure. We'll be interested to see how the Patriots handled the Baltimore running game, and then if the running game happens to fall apart, what are we going to see from Lamar Jackson?
That will be the interesting part.
I think that's where it can get really exciting. Moving on, going to a different AFC North team, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Gosh.
Our good friend Dennis's favorite team.
We had to talk about it.
They have a bit of a shakeup at the QB.
They do. They do indeed.
Dennis, would you like to inform those who may or may not
This is
know?
your segment, Dennis, right here.
This is all you, buddy. Take it away.
This is exciting. So I am beyond thrilled to see. Oh, well, I'll preface this by noting the fact that I have the uttermost respect for none other than Andy Dalton. The Red Rifle he's put in so much work, so much time. He's put in so much to this organization, really, as a whole. And I've been blessed to be a fan since his rookie year when he took us to the playoffs right off the bat.
Yep.
Albeit a loss in Houston at the hands of none other than J.J. Watt as he intercepted Andy Dalton at the line of scrimmage with one of the most egregious plays I can remember watching in my life. But I absolutely love Andy Dalton. But here's my take on this. And for those of you who don't know, the Cincinnati Bengals have announced this week that following Week 9 bye, they will be rolling with Ryan Finley, rookie quarterback out of North Carolina State, at quarterback in replace of Andy Dalton. And this is the first time that the Bengals have replaced Andy Dalton for a non-injury reason since he came into the league.
Yeah.
And so
Definitely speaks to his longevity and his,
exactly.
Well,
I
what
believe
the
it's at,
Bengals think of him as a quarterback.
I believe it's at 8 years now. Someone could fact check me on that. I'll be disappointed if I'm wrong. It's either 8 or 9. I'm pretty sure it's 8. That Andy Dalton has been on now for the Cincinnati Bengals, and so this is a massive move. But I love it, and the reason I love it is because it's a win-win in my mind. You bring in this rookie quarterback, you believe him, you picked him in the 4th round, you passed on Haskins, you passed on these guys that everyone wanted. At least I know myself wanted, and
You
you
didn't
take
even
this
try
guy
to trade up or anything?
You didn't try to trade up, exactly. You take this guy in the 4th round out of North Carolina State. No one ever heard of him before. But the Bengals believed in him. He was the only quarterback that they brought in before the draft to talk to, and they fell in love with him, and they came out and said that. And so who am I to fault him? So I actually loved what I saw out of Ryan Finley in the preseason, albeit the preseason. Take that for what it's worth.
Yep.
But I absolutely love the kid. I think he's going to be good. And here's the thing that's the kicker about this scenario is if he's good, even with a completely trash offensive line.
Which it's a darn shame that their first-round pick is not healthy then.
Yeah, exactly. Jonah Williams would have been a massive influence on the Bengals' successes this season. Just absolutely massive influence. But
egregious offensive line.
Egregious offensive line. So if Finley comes in and produces, and this is best case scenario, he wins you a couple games despite the lackluster offensive line and I'll say the lackluster defense as a whole.
Yeah.
As Bobby might put it, Swiss cheese defense.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Last in the league, I believe, looking at that now, last in the league in rushing defense, it looks like. So
Yeah, absolutely
terrible.
Then you know that you've got something in this kid, and you know that you can trust him moving forward. And maybe because he wins a couple games, you don't get the first-round draft pick, or you don't get the first pick of the draft, you don't get the second pick of the draft. But you're still probably going to be in the top 10 somewhere. I mean, he's not going to win out.
Sure.
There's plenty of quarterbacks available coming up in the next draft.
Exactly, and that's what I was about to get to. If he completely bombs and you let him play these 8 games, and we go 0-16, then you now have enough of a data set and enough of history of Ryan Finley to understand what you need in that draft.
That's right.
And so now you have the pick to go get an actual quarterback if you decide that's what you need.
Yep.
And so
Take for Tua.
Exactly. So if he's completely awful and completely regresses from what we saw early on in preseason, then you know that perhaps it's time to choose another quarterback.
Right.
And if he's successful, or at least shows that he can progress, then you might not have that top draft pick. You might be looking at more of a sixth, seventh pick, but you don't need a quarterback now because you've got a guy you believe in. You go elsewhere with that pick, and so I think it's a win-win situation. You know what you got in Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
You have tape and tape and tape on Andy Dalton. He's been the quarterback for 8 years, so you know what you got in him.
Yeah. I think even with Ryan Finley, if they go 0-16, 1-15, 2-14, and anything. I think just being, it's the year of the backup quarterback this year.
It is.
And maybe, hopefully, that could bode well for Bengals fans. But I think even if, the Bengals were, to go 0-16, 1-15, as long as you can, see that, Finley has a chance to develop.
That's the thing.
Then you can...
Positive growth.
Yeah, right. Positive growth, even in a loss, still playing relatively well.
Yep.
As a rookie, you can't
keeping the ball out of harm's way.
Yeah, making smart decisions, being, cognizant with the football. I think you can, then you can avoid having to take a quarterback. You can address a different need at that point if the opportunity presents itself. But, I think, it is a good move by the Bengals to make this decision because your season is what it is at this point.
Exactly. You're not salvaging it from 0-8.
Exactly. Andy Dalton isn't getting any younger. And, at some point, Andy Dalton isn't going to be in the league anymore, and someone's going to have the torch passed on to them as the next starting quarterback.
Is that Ryan Finley? Who's that?
Right, and exactly. Now you're giving yourself an opportunity to see, is Ryan Finley, does he have a chance to be our quarterback of the future? Or are we going to have to look elsewhere in the draft? I think the Bengals are, it's a definite win-win. I'm sure as a competitor, Andy Dalton isn't necessarily thrilled with the idea of being benched, but I'm sure, as a loyal Bengals quarterback and teammate, he definitely probably understands, what the organization and the coaching staff are trying to get from getting a look at Ryan Finley.
Yeah, I think his body's going to feel a whole lot better on that Monday after following from the punishment that the man's been taking.
Absolutely brutal behind that line.
Behind the line, and it's just a shame. The problem for me with the Cincinnati Bengals, as with any bad team, is the needs are all over the place.
Yeah,
it really is no one specific position, one specific side of the ball even. Which is all over the place.
Yeah, which is a shame considering, you guys did have some expectations, I would assume, coming into this season.
Dennis, what did you tell us at the beginning of the season?
Before Jonah Williams got hurt, before AJ Green got hurt, I felt like,
who wants a contract?
As Bengals fans, you were probably looking, that you thought you had a chance with the shakeup of the AFC North, that you had a chance to maybe make the playoffs and do some damage.
Yeah, I remember having a lot of conversations about how the AFC North was just completely up for grabs. And with everything that had changed, unproven Browns, banged up Steelers that are not the same without Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown.
How does Lamar Jackson improve?
And the uncertainty behind Lamar Jackson as well. And so it really did seem like a division up for the taking. Then you have the injury to Jonah Williams, the injury to A.J. Green, which is another factor that I think will be really interesting is Andy Dalton and A.J. Green came into this league at the same time. They were both rookies the same year, and they have grown together. And so now you've got this receiver, the star receiver, coming back from injury, and his first game of the season is going to be with a quarterback he's never played with before.
Right.
And a rookie quarterback at that. And so that chemistry that Andy and AJ have is not necessarily going to be there. And so how does that impact AJ's performance as well as Ryan Finley's performance? I'm going to be really interested to see that. I hope that they're able to develop something. But, at the end of the day, AJ Green and Andy Dalton were, they were brothers coming into this league. Like
they were
knew each other. They were the Bengals, and that seems to be dissolving. And so how does that affect the future? I'm really interested to see that. So we'll definitely see how it plays out. But I will go out and say that I do believe in Ryan Finley.
Oh, yeah. Well, as you got to definitely have hope as a Bengals fan with a year that you've been having.
You got to have something to hold on to.
And, continuing with mediocre franchises of the past 20-odd years.
For all time.
Bobby, mine and yours, truly the lovable losers, the Detroit Football Lions.
The Lions.
God.
It doesn't seem like it probably on a national scale, but for both of the teams, the Lions and Raiders this week, this is a big game for them moving forward. The Lions, they've suffered, some brutal losses early this season.
Oh my God!
Now they sit
a brutal tie.
And that tie with Arizona, now they sit at 3-3-1. Could they, be 5-2, 6-1, 4-3? There's a lot of what ifs that have been the Detroit Lions season, which feels like what I say every year.
It is
when it comes to the Detroit Lions. But they have a chance. They at the very least the Lions most likely have to win 7 out of their last 9 games to make the playoffs this year, and they already got through the gauntlet, in my opinion. They're going to get Oakland this week, and we'll get back to them in a bit, but we're going to get Washington. We're going to get Tampa Bay We get Denver.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we already got through the Chiefs and Eagles and Chargers and Packers and Vikings once. You know, and I'm not sold on the Bears.
Oh my God, the Bears are garbage.
Yeah, the Bears. You know, going into this season, you know, a lot of people had the Bears and Packers pegged as the two teams to fight it out for the North, and now the Bears look like the Lions of old. You know, offensively, you know, they just can't get anything done.
They're looking like darn fools for taking Mitch Trubisky in the draft as well.
That is
Every
definitely the case. With each passing week, Mitch Trubisky's selection looks worse and worse. You know, and it's a shame to waste such a great defense that the Bears have, but even they aren't as dominant, as they once were. So, you know, I think the Bears, you know, they present opportunities for the Lions to win both of those. The Dallas Cowboys are an enigma at this point. You know, what are the Cowboys? Are they a good team, a bad team, an average team? Sit at 4-3 atop the NFC East.
They're top 10 in both offense and defense, and they've had not very much to show for it.
That's right. You know, I mean. You know, they got the Eagles, you know, breathing down their necks at, you know, 4-4 or whatever the Eagles are. Maybe they're 4-3 as well.
The division is killing each other right now.
Yeah, the division, you know, the NFC East appears to be the weakest division. Does that bode well for the Lions? I think it's a possibility. But, you know, just looking at the remainder of their schedule, definitely have to win 7 of 9. You can throw in, I think, you know, our toss-up games will be against the Cowboys, the Packers for the second time, and the Vikings the second time. And, you know, unfortunately, we're going to have to go to Minnesota for that game, which is never an easy environment to win in. Fortunately for us, Green Bay comes to town week 17. And then Dallas is also at home. So, you know, they got those three questionable games, assuming that the Lions are a playoff team. This is a big if, too. You know, what have the Lions proven to me in the last however many years?
Your lifetime.
My lifetime, that they're even worthy of such, you know, expectations in my head. But I think if you're going off the fact that, you know, they have very winnable games against Oakland this week, you know, against Tampa Bay, Denver, twice against Chicago, as well as the Redskins. You know, that's five games right there that, in my mind, are chalked up as W's.
Even an average team.
Even an average team. You know, I think, you know, Darrell Bevell has got to find a way to do something with the running game, and it doesn't help that Kerryon Johnson's going to be shelved on the IR.
Which is horrible.
So I think the Lions and Darrell Bevell have to take a look and see whether or not, you know, they should continue to try to establish a run game, because let's face it, Matthew Stafford's playing the best he's played in years.
He's playing fantastic.
You know, he's getting praise from head coaches every week from the opposing sideline. You know, consistency, you know, if it helps that he's healthy this year.
Number one passing touchdowns in the league.
That's what I'm saying. You know, he was playing with a broken back pretty much all of last year. You know, the defense, I believe, is letting them down. You know, last drive against Kansas City, give up the game-winning, you know, score. Green Bay.
Last in the league of passing yards allowed, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Horrendous.
Exactly. You know, and their rush defense isn't much better. You know, Green Bay, again, you know, had a chance to close it out the end. Questionable calls, of course. But, I mean, you know, egregious calls if you're a Lions fan, but you're used to them. You're practically desensitized at this point. But nonetheless, you know, they had a chance to stop that drive earlier than that call, and they didn't.
Had a chance to score tubs instead of field goals,
that's
and that
right.
did not happen.
That's also, you know, a very relevant, you know, explanation. You know, got to get touchdowns, not field goals. And then the same thing with Minnesota. You know, Stafford leads a late drive, down 5 points. Defense gets one stop, gets the ball back. You're feeling really good about the Lions winning that game with Matthew Stafford. You know, his resume and success as being a clutch player in the NFL. You know, you feel really good about Stafford having roughly 2 minutes of clock to work with, you know, to lead a touchdown scoring drive down that game. So I really think what this game is going to come down to, Oakland's passing defense is not much better than ours.
It's very slightly. Looking at yards right now, the Detroit Lions rank last in the league in yards, as I said. The Oakland Raiders are currently at 30th.
Yes,
so
exactly.
they're not much above us.
So passing defense is separated by, you know, 2 spots in the NFL standings. You know, it's really going to come down to, Can the Lions stop Josh Jacobs? Josh Jacobs for Oakland this year has been very good for them. And Oakland also has a very solid offensive line. They don't get a lot of talk. They don't really have any big names over there. But looking at their stats leading up to the game earlier this week, I was looking, Derek Carr got touched one time all of last week against Houston.
That's just incredible.
It is incredible. And they've been able to keep Derek Carr upright for most of this year. Factor in the fact that the Lions' pass rush has been relatively invisible this year.
Underwhelming.
Feels like every quarterback they've played has years in the pocket. So it'll be interesting. Oakland's a balanced team. John Gruden's doing great things over there, and it's going to be up. Oakland is favored by 2.5 at home. Coming back home for the first time in, I believe, 5 weeks. They've been on the road in London. It's really going to come down to. I foresee it being a shootout almost. Oakland's running attack versus the Lions' air attack. I have a feeling Stafford's going to put up some big numbers against Oakland's secondary. But that's really what's going to come down to. Can the Lions make enough stops defensively so Matthew Stafford and company can take the W? Because I am firmly confident in Stafford's ability to get us to a win. I do really think it's going to be up to the defense to make the stops when they need to.
Derek, what's your score on the game?
What is my score? I can see this game being anywhere from 17 to 14 to 34 to 27, and I'm going to stick with 34 to 27 as my prediction. I think the Lions are going to put points on the board. I think Oakland's going to put points on the board early, but I think when it comes down to it, the Lions will get the touchdown they need. The Raiders will, get stopped by our Lions defense when we finally need the stop, and I think, the Lions walk out of Oakland with the win, 34 to 27.
What do you think, Bobby?
I'm thinking, Derek really covered all. I was going to say as far as the tactics of the game, as far as the score goes, I'm right in there with you. I could see it being an absolute slugfest defensively or being a slugfest offensively, and I'm going to stick with a 28-27 Lions win.
Ooh, wow. The one-pointer. Darn near giving me a heart attack every week, the Detroit Lions.
Is that going to be a last-second score, Bobby, or is it going to be a defensive stop?
That's going to be a last-second score.
It's going to be a last-second score.
We've seen too many times that Matt Stafford's not had that chance to make that last drive, or had to try to put something together in the last seconds, and I believe it'll come to fruition against the Swiss cheese.
And there it is, Swiss cheese.
The Swiss cheese that is the Oakland Raiders secondary. They are absolutely devoid of veterans. And I think that Matt Stafford, it's time for the Lions to draw a line in the sand, as I like to say, and turn the season towards the positive. Because as Derek said, these last weeks are going to be much easier than the first weeks, and we need to beat up on some teams that have had it coming.
I agree. As much as I hate to see 28-27 coming out of Bobby's mouth, that's also very realistic. This game spread, I think if you're a bettor, I'm taking the Lions against the spread this week, and I'm not a betting man, but I don't think if Oakland does happen to win that they even win by 3 points. I think if anything it'll be a close one. I would prefer to see the Lions, really set the tone both offensively and defensively, get out to a big lead and just kind of hold it. Give themselves a 7 to 10 point cushion throughout the game, and then.
But wouldn't we in every game?
But yes, wouldn't we all, as all sports fans, enjoy a comfortable lead throughout the game? But I think this is a stepping stone game for the Lions. I think this is a game that's going to determine how the rest of their season goes, because they haven't proven that
we can be elite teams.
Exactly, and I wouldn't even consider Oakland an elite team.
No,
I consider them maybe a slightly above average team at best. And if we can't even beat a slightly above average team on the road, especially after coming off of beating Philadelphia in Philly, albeit with a depleted wide receiver core, I think Philly's a much better team than Oakland.
Indeed.
And so if we struggle, to put Oakland away, I definitely would be concerned, and especially if we lose, I think that's just going to be a really big blow, because this Lions team is a really tough team, mentally. They really don't make too many mental mistakes in terms of the penalty department, or a mistake is made. They do a really good job of fighting back, clawing back, really trying to make the most of every opportunity they have. Special teams is a different story. Special teams, former CMU head football coach John Bonamego.
1-11.
1-11
Absolutely
against an
awful.
FCS team. As our special teams coordinator, special teams has been a huge letdown this year. They take horrible penalties, just missed assignments. I think the special teams is a mess. I'm surprised Coach Bonamego's made it this far. But clearly the staff's either got to see something in him that they like, or there's just not a better option out there. You always hate to see a guy fired midseason as well. Maybe they wait till the end of the year. But, just as a little side tangent, Lions special teams has not impressed me this year.
Dennis, as the only non-homer, as our listeners say, non-homer in this segment.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the what's the points? What's the score of the game at the end?
Yeah, so I'm gonna hold off on putting a score in this game. I've been thinking about it over here, but what I will say is I think the last team with the ball wins this football game.
Okay.
I think the offenses compared to just the statistics that Bobby was looking at, and just watching the gameplay alone, you can just tell Matthew Stafford is having such an elite season. It's going to be really hard to stop Josh Jacobs in Oakland, and I truly believe that both of these teams have the capability to win the game on a last-second drive, last-second field goal, whatever it may be. I would love to see the Lions win for
Mediocre
Derek
teams
and Bobby's sake here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to refrain from putting a score on the game. I'm going to say whoever has the ball last will win.
Alrighty, fair enough. And now I think moving on to our last segment, the right bench ballers. This was one, that I think is going to be really enjoyable to you guys as an audience, and it's really fun for us as well.
Right bench ballers.
What the right bench ballers entails is taking a standout performance, from a guy you would consider on the right bench. That's his position, right bench. And so
gets an opportunity and takes advantage.
Coming out of nowhere.
Coming out of absolute nowhere, to come through and deliver either clutch play, clutch performance, or just really make himself stand out from the rest of his right bench brethren or sisters. We're not going to limit this just to male athletes, but this week, I'll start it off. My right bench baller this week is none other than Detroit Lions wide receiver Marvin Hall Jr. The man is basically a one-play machine. Going back to the game against Green Bay, the flea flicker.
Yep.
Marvin Hall hauls that in for a reception of 58 yards, and that's all he does all game from an offensive standpoint in terms of production. Minnesota, one reception, 47 yards. He didn't score a touchdown, but he made a big play when it mattered. And finally, last week when we took down the New York Football Giants, one reception, 49 yards, and a touchdown. He's currently on the season, 5 receptions, 201 yards, averaging 40.2 yards a catch with 1 touchdown. But the man's definitely, not a brand name player, definitely what, you would consider if you think of a right bench baller. Marvin Hall is that guy, definitely made the most of his opportunities. Stafford laid a beautiful one out there for him. And for this week, Marvin Hall Jr. is my right bench baller with that 49-yard touchdown reception against New York.
There we go. All right, I'm going to go on and contribute to this conversation. For my right bench baller of the week, I have none other than Andy Isabella of the Arizona Cardinals.
From last night's performance.
So listen to this, my man. So he has been targeted 3 times on this season. He has 3 receptions. He was targeted twice and caught 2 passes for 8 yards against the New York Giants in Week 7. Last night, Thursday on Halloween night versus San Francisco, he catches 1 pass and takes it to the house for 88 yards.
That's right, man.
If you could just look up this video, this is just an incredible play by Isabella. The yards after catch on this play is incredible. The speed, just coming out of nowhere. This man who's caught the ball 3 times this season. And last night he took one to the house for 88 yards, his first touchdown of the year as well. So that's my right bench baller of the week, coming out of nowhere, even though the Cardinals did inevitably lose that game to the now still undefeated San Francisco 49ers.
What a story they are.
Another interesting topic that we could talk about, but perhaps for another time.
Yes.
And to conclude the segment, my right bench baller is none other than Hunter Renfrow of the Oakland Raiders, pick number 149 in the 2019 draft, a 5th-round selection. The man on the season has got a total of 18 receptions, 203 yards, and 1 tub for an 11.3 yard average. But the specific instance I'm referring to is this past Sunday's game against the Houston Texans, where the man was targeted 4 times, had 4 receptions, and with an 88-yard performance in a tub.
That's right, dude.
That's incredible.
And the man had not had a performance higher than 30 yards prior to this game. And his 4 receptions matches his season high for the year. By no means has had a breakout season by any stretch of the imagination. Only a 5th-round pick, but he had a great game, catching all of his targets for a 22-yard average and a 65-yard long, 65-yard catch on the day. Gotta tip your hats to Hunter Renfrow getting involved. And unfortunately, the Oakland Raiders did come up a bit short by 3, 27-24 against the Houston Texans. But a great game to come onto the scene for a young gun like Renfrow and make an impact after being such a raw 5th-round selection.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of our right bench ballers this week.
Yeah, big congratulations.
Big congratulations
to Marvin Hall, Andy Isabella, and Hunter Renfrow.
That's right.
Inaugural.
That's right. Our inaugural
class
award winners for the Garbage Time Takes podcast. Inaugural winners: Andy Isabella, Marvin Hall Jr., and Hunter Renfrow. Congratulations. We're just trying to shed some light.
And make sure somebody needs to put some respect on your name.
That's right. And so that's our job, for every podcast. We're going to give the bench guys some love because they deserve it.
Give them some love.
That's right. I think, I don't know how long we've been going for at this point, but
Oh man, we're pushing 1 hour and 12 minutes.
Well, at that point,
crazy.
On that point, I think we can probably call this one an episode. It's really been enjoyable. I've had a really fun time with you guys. Pilot episode number 1 of Garbage Time Takes. We look forward to many more with you, and we will see you on the next one.